What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review a 2013 EP by Petey Plastic. Basically, this project is called New York City Scheme, and it came out in the late fall of 2013. So the thing about this particular project is just the fact. So Petey Plastic had another project that came after this one in particular that I was going to review eventually down the road this summer as far as that pitch can win. It was called Problematic, and it came out in 2022, but he removed it recently. So this is one of the so this is the last PD project left I have to review here. It's a pretty good pitch to get this one. Some good stuff here, I definitely have to say. Has a number of projects. He's kind of more low key nowadays. I'm surprised he's been putting out at least singles and pitches like that. But this is it's kind of curious as to why he had like a string of albums between 2013 and early 2014. Then he just didn't come back supposedly until 2022. I don't know what really happened there. I looked him up a little bit on Google and stuff, and apparently he was going to put out like an album in 2019, something like that. I forget what it was called. I could probably put it in the connotation here, but it's just kind of the concept. He had something. He was working on something in 2019. He was going to put out another album. But yeah, he was just a product of like the early mid 2010s as far as that pitch gun went. But he definitely capitalized on like the electronica sound of like Blood on the Dance Floor and Jeffree Star and some of those type folks. 303, LMFAO, some of those type folks in particular. But the thing about it was by late 2013 when this particular product came out, it seemed like the EDM type sound was starting to get swashed up a bit and was not quite as pertinent and as popular as it full blown was in like 2011, 2012, and 2010, some of those type years with Kesha and 303 and folks like that, Cobra Starship, LMFAO. Just kind of the concept. It just kind of felt like, and the thing about it is here is Petey Plastic tries some different things on this particular product. It doesn't always work, but I at least like the concept of him at least attempting it. But it's just the fact that because it's only 6 songs, when you don't appreciate all of the songs in this particular project, it just doesn't come off as well hard hitting. The thing about this particular product is just the fact that it's not quite as heavy hitting this time in terms of like the blistering kind of appeal. Just like the stuff, if you like the album Don't Do Drugs by Petey Plastic, or like Leet Speak, one of those type ones that I reviewed. It's just kind of the concept of this one has some of that craziness, but this feels like by this particular product, Petey Plastic kind of calmed down. But that's kind of a surprising thing, just because the Monstrous album that came out in early 2014, I remember giving like a 10 out of 10 also. So he kind of switched the tempo back up on that particular project, which is interesting. Is the amalgamation of what Petey Plastic went through in 2013, 2014 as far as the pitch went, because he was definitely a pretty blossoming rapper and musician between 2013 and 2014. Just some good pitches there to kind of get. He managed to do a song with Javon. I remember Jackal Goldkick showing me a song that he did off that particular collaboration, pitches like that. He's dropped a lot of singles. He collaborated with Aisha Erotica, who I might get to some of her music at some point as far as the pitch goes. But it's just kind of the concept, just being able to say, just kind of looking after some of these type ones. It's surprising that PD Plastic didn't catch on more because he definitely had a pretty good niche. I feel like he's a pretty good replacement to Jeffree Star as he started to phase out in like the early 2010s. And by phase, I'm talking about Jeffree Star phase now. Jeffree Star made music till about 2012, 2013 before retiring from music, or at least decided not to do it that oftenly anymore. But PD Plastic definitely had some good variations of stuff that he did around this particular time. It just was too bad that he didn't catch on more as far as that kind of went. It's interesting is because on Spotify it says that he gets like 50,000, 75,000 annual kind of, says he gets like 50,000, 70,000 kind of monthly listens on Spotify and pitches like that. So it's interesting. There are a lot of folks fucking with him, despite the fact on Spotify that this particular product, New York City Scheme, doesn't have any songs on here that have more than 1,000 plays, I'd have to say. So it's an interesting concept. He's kind of still a blossoming musician, but it's just kind of the concept that is just kind of, you just have to, if you know kind of territory. But even his YouTube only has like 6,000 subscribers as far as that pitch goes. But he definitely has some good stuff. I do appreciate it. I never got the chance to listen to Problematic, but he does basically all the other projects that he dropped, the 4 or 5, I think it was 4 that he particularly did as a total, not counting Problematic. I'd say were pretty classic damn near. I mean, I don't do drugs and Monstrous were classics, and then Leet Speak was pretty damn good, I'd say. So this is just another highlight one, even if it's tamer. But we'll go ahead and talk about the songs I recommend on here. So basically, there's 6 songs in this particular project. There's 6 songs in this particular product, and out of those 6, I wound up recommending 4. So it's kind of the concept. The only 2 songs I don't recommend on here would just be New York City Scheme, the title track, and then Runway. The only 2 songs I don't recommend on here would be New York City Scheme, the title track, and then Runaway. So basically, talk about those real quick. Basically, New York City Scheme was just kind of talking about some chica in the song that was just trying to come up in New York, pitches like that, but just wasn't faring as well. Just kind of the concept behind it was just kind of one, not quite as compelling or thrilling. Just kind of felt like a more bustling type one. Just make it in the city type fair. Just like a worse rendition of like Empire State of Mind or something like that. I mean, this is kind of trying to be like a bustling kind of up and at 'em type one, but I didn't really appreciate the approach to how that one particularly kind of turned out. It was just kind of meh. And then Runaway was just kind of like a homely type song. I like the production on this particular song. If Petey Plastic would have pulled this song off with a little bit better of atmosphere, I probably would have liked this one a little bit better. It's kind of a little bit more of like an atonement type song as far as that pitch goes. Just regrets and pitches like that. I'd have to say was just kind of the concept. I just feel like the production type fare of that particular song exceeds like the actual song format to how that kind of particularly could have went. Maybe it could have been like a hungover song or something like that. I would have said probably would have fared better, but it's just kind of, I don't know. This is not as glossy as what it probably needed to be. But I look after it just being able to talk about some of these. So talk about the songs on here. So basically, We're Not Going Home is a pretty highlighted type pitch. Do like this one. Should definitely take you back to like 2011, 2012 pitches like that, just as far as that kind of goes. Things like 303, Kesha, LMFAO, some of those type folks. It's like a vintage early 2010s EDM dance noise of a song, I'd have to say in particular. Like I was saying, this definitely reminds me of 303 and folks like that, and this just feels like yesteryear here on this particular song. So it's a good song, definitely. But I think the point of this particular song is it's supposed to feel like 2011, 2012. Some of that type sound is like that sound started to wash out, not be quite as popular as it was like 2 or 3 years before this particular album came out. So it's just kind of the concept just within that aspect. I mean, it's too bad that EDM didn't carry on into like 2014 and 2015 more full blown as far as that pitch kind of went. This folks started to kind of simmer in pitches like that. I think if LMFAO had been around in 2013 and 2014, I think it probably would have lasted longer. Some of those type folks, but Cobra Starship kind of vanished. Also, they're just were an amalgamation of folks that just didn't stick around from that particular sound, weren't able to carry the torch as far as that particular kind of went. It's just kind of the concept. But Petey Plastic does a pretty good job. Definitely feels like ripped out of early 2010s. It's like the concept is some real good EDM type fare, just pitches like that. Real good concept. It's just kind of the fact that, I mean, it feels like yesteryear, but I do like the concept of it, just to ride out to some of these more songs and just kind of have the enjoyment. But that's the thing about this particular just to kind of have some of that enjoyment. But that's the thing about this particular project is the energy on this particular project is just a lot more mellow and just kind of the energy on this particular project is a lot more mellow and just not as fiery as Petey Plastic was on Don't Do Drugs and Monstrous. I mean, I guess he got his energy back on Monstrous from 2014, but it's just kind of the concept of the energy of this particular project is just not as severe and quite as heavy hitting. I mean, Petey Plastic just feels like a natural kind of party animal pitches like that where he's always fucked up, probably fucked up 25, 28 days out of a 30-day month, something like that as far as that particular kind of goes. Just really enjoys like the accelerating quick life and pitches like that as far as that would kind of happen. Just being able to say just some quick living, but I just look after it. It's just a little bit where it's even starting to wear on him. It feels like in certain cases. I mean, he still has some throwing songs on here, but in terms of like some of the craziest type ones that he had, energy is just not quite as severe. It's just a little bit more not. I mean, it's not quite full blown composed to the point where he's book reading and going to libraries and pitches like that. And it's kind of more Panera Bread and Starbucks type music, but it's just kind of the concept of just being able to say there's not a lot of full blown makeshift type songs on here, but it's just kind of the concept of just that in between type feeling and just questioning, maybe I should slow it down, but then probably not. But just kind of the concept of this, it just feels like the energy on this particular EP is like a 7 out of 10 in terms of like the actual ferocity compared to like 10 out of 10 on some of his other projects. Is the blistering energy that I found him with, I'd have to say. But Burning Bridges Like Cigarettes is another highlighted one. It's like a torch kind of trippy electronica distortion of a song, I'd have to say in particular. This is definitely some after hours heaviness, I would feel like, and this is just a good bop. So I would definitely say about this one, just the concept behind this. There's definitely one for like some after hours, like 1 o'clock, definitely like 1:30, 2:30 in the morning, pitches like that as far as that particular kind of goes. Just being real burnt and just that sort of thing, just really torn up, just kind of feeling it, just kind of the after effect of just the ambience of just heavy, just the ambience of heavy partying, getting crunk pretty heavily as far as that particular getting crunk pretty heavily, but just the ambience, just the after effects of kind of marinating and like the house party and pitches like that, or just the venues, just places where you would be and just kind of soaking it all in as far as that particular would kind of go. I just like the concept of some of these type ones, but it is pretty nice ones. It's kind of the concept. There's another good amalgamation. I just appreciate this particular energy, but even this one feels a little bit burnt out compared to some of Petey Plastic's normal fieriness, I'd have to say, just as far as I would go. But the production on here is pretty thrilling. I mean, this is not so much like a full-blown song, and this is kind of some short. I mean, this is a kind of Burning Bridges Like Cigarettes is a pretty snappy type song. Just kind of get this really feels like a real kind of more just distortion of a song, more so than something that like Fatboy Slim or some of those type folks would do, more so than a full-blown kind of rap song, something like that, or pop rap song or electronica type song. But works for what it is. It's a throw-in type one, but it's just kind of has more distortion towards it. Champagne is a pretty nice one. This is a nice flirty kind of romantic type song. It's like a nice evening. Champagne is like a nice evening social accommodation of a song, I'd have to say in particular. Real nice one for that. This is like some residential kind of cool in music, I would definitely have to say. And this is like a decent dance bounce that this song particularly kind of has, but it just kind of has like some mid energy. Champagne just has some mid energy, I would have to say in particular. It was this kind of concept. It's not mid in quality. This is definitely a pretty good song. It's just kind of concept about just being like a relatively just tamer compared to Petey Plastic's normal craziness. But it's a pretty solid one. It's just kind of a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more cool and type music just for hangout type fare, just where you're not fiery, taking 10 shots, 13 shots, something like that with liquor bottles, pitches like that, I'd say. So it's a good concept. Her Daddy Doesn't Like Me is a pretty nice one as well. It's like a more kind of jivey type one, more electronic type one. This one's a little bit more energized type one, but still pretty basic in terms of the overall fare of it. It's like a basic kind of evening jive of a song, I'd have to say. The song exhilarates, but it's still relatively mid in tone, I'd have to say in particular. And this is just like some stock turn up. So I just would have to say about some of these. I really like the particular fanfare of some of these type of songs, but it's just kind of the concept of it. Just is so strange that Petey Plastic had kind of calmed down with this relative pitch. I'd say, especially just the fact that he only had like a couple projects out. I'd have to say he put out 3 projects in 2013, so it's just kind of the pitch. I do definitely feel like Leet Speak and Don't Do Drugs are just superior to this particular project, but it's not to say this is gonna get. It's not to say this project's going to get a bad score. I'd say it's just relatively. I mean, I don't want to say it's tamer in terms like this is like a bad project and it's just not accustomed to like quality and pitches like that. But it's just kind of the concept. I just think it's relatively noticeable. Just the fact that this is just not as fiery. I'd say it's just kind of the concept of this relative tamer is like more of like a butter knife type project compared to like the steak knife of like previous projects. I'd have to say, but it's not. I still think it's recommendable. So in terms of score, I'm going to give this particular EP. I'm going to have to say I'm going to go ahead and give this EP like a 7.75 out of 10. It's pretty good just within that pitch. Me not recommending 2 songs out of 6 on here is me not recommending 2 songs out of 6 on here. It's just kind of concept. I mean, you'd say 2/3 of the project that'd be like a 6.5 out of 10. I'm going to give it a 7.75 just because the overall quality and fun, thrilling factor of how it particularly kind of goes. There's some good concepts with the social factor. I'm going to go ahead and give the social factor of this album like I'm going to go ahead and give the social score of this EP like an 8.5 out of 10. I mean, I want to give it like a higher score, but it's just relatively. I feel like there's better songs by Petey Plastic. I don't even want to say that this is like entry. If you had to start new with Petey Plastic, I still would probably go with Don't Do Drugs, Monstrous, just any of the other projects, just because they have a little bit more affable type energy. This one's just a more calmer type one for just for like more residential kickback and just kind of more relatively just not quite as feeling ferocious today type altitudes. I mean, it's just kind of concept of just like an alternative to just if you have been getting crunk for like a good weekend, 2 or 3 weekends, pitches like that. You need like some basic kind of fanfare, just still some fun stuff, but not quite as crazy. Maybe like a 7, 7.5 in terms of relative craziness. This is a pretty good pitch to go with. This kind of happens to be a thing, but 8.5 social, just because the concept of this is still throwing just within the concepts of it. It's just kind of the concept that this is not quite as the bite is just not as severe this time. Just that to say, but that's the concept. So in terms of the future, like Petey Plastic, in terms of the future, like I was saying, Petey Plastic did have another project called Problematic back that came out in 20. He did have a project called Problematic that came out in 2022, but as of early June, just like a few days ago, but as of early June of 2024, just a few days ago, it seemed like he deleted it from his YouTube and Spotify and Amazon and iTunes and pitches like that, I'd have to say. So it's kind of an unfortunate thing. I did kind of want to listen to that, and I did have plans to eventually review it just to cap that one off in particular and see Petey Plastic's whole catalog as far as that particular kind of went, because it looked pretty thrilling. I mean, he had like this spooky kind of ski mask on there that was pretty awesome to kind of get. Not quite the yeet mask and things like that, but definitely something that had some haunting type appeal. This is a pretty good concept to kind of see what Petey Plastic would have been up to in the 2020s as far as that pitch kind of went. But we'll, basically, if it does ever resurface or if it pops up on YouTube, I'll probably review it. But for the time being, this is Petey Plastic's full catalog completed. So I just would have to say, check out the Petey Plastic playlist. There's definitely some excellent stuff here. Like I said, this is a little bit of a tamer type project in terms of energy, but he is pretty blistering. I feel like even for Petey Plastic being a 7 in energy on this particular project, he's still crazier than a lot of folks out there, I'd have to say. So it's some good stuff to kind of get. His whole catalog's full of crazy type bops and jams, plenty of good demon time and stuff like that to kind of have for some nightlife. So it's just some excellent concepts, and this is easy enough to recommend his whole catalog here.